Good morning, guys. Hey, just want to take a few minutes to share with you a little bit of insights from the one-year reading this morning. You know, these last several days in the New Testament portion of the 1 year, we've been in the book of Acts. And we've seen Paul and Barnabas, we've seen these guys, missionaries, going around to all these different cities. And these different cities are what is current day Turkey. So it lists Derbe and Lystra, lists all these different cities. In today's reading, it says that they were in Antioch of Syria, which isn't the Syria we know today. That was actually in current day Turkey. So we have Paul going around to all these towns, all these villages in Turkey, and he starts churches. He preaches the gospel. And it says that he actually makes disciples. And man, he starts all these churches, and man, we got a great move of God going on here. And you know, it's just a really encouraging, exciting story. And then when you back up and you zoom out a little bit, then you see actually a little bit of sadness in it, because what you see is, 2,000 years later, Turkey is a country that is 98% Muslim. So less than 2% would profess to know Jesus Christ as their Savior. Yet in the Bible, we have Paul, like the greatest missionary ever. He's going to all these towns and he's starting churches and people are getting saved and he's making disciples. And 2,000 years later, there's barely a Christian witness in Turkey anymore. And man, you think this excitement that turns to this kind of sadness and kind of what happened. And just as I've been praying about it, what I see that happened is, the Bible tells us that Paul made disciples in these cities. But what happens many times is, in Christianity is, someone leads someone to Jesus, they make a disciple, they teach them to make disciples. But then a few generations down the road, Christianity has this tendency, not true Christianity, but Christianity has this tendency to become inward focused, and it becomes about the person, it becomes about the individual, and it stops becoming about going out and making disciples. So what had to happen along the way somewhere is they stopped being challenged to make disciples. I mean, you get it? Like in the beginning, Paul led people to Jesus. He made disciples. The church started growing. And actually, we know historically, for a few hundred years, the church grew really strong in Turkey. But somewhere along the way, the church became inward focused. And people stopped making disciples. Guys, when people stop making disciples, the church dies. This is what happened in Turkey. When people stop making disciples, the church dies. When the church becomes focused about the individual and it becomes all about me and what can I get and what can God do for me, and not about what does God want for me? How can I give God my life? And guys, you give God your life by loving Him, by bringing Him glory through making disciples. And I just want to encourage you this morning, let's just be real and just be honest. Are you making disciples? The church dies when people aren't making disciples. Are you making disciples? Have you identified, like Jesus, have you spent time in prayer, crying out to God, asking Him, Lord, who should I pour into? And then finding that person and pouring into them everything that you've learned, everything you've been taught, everything that Jesus is doing for you, you're sharing with them. Guys, the church thrives when we make disciples, and the church dies when we stop making disciples. Guys, be a disciple who makes disciples who makes disciples. Love you guys. Bless you guys. Have a great day. Go find some disciples today.